Hi students, my name is Emma Reed. I am an 8th grade math teacher, and today we are working on day 1 of our Putting It All Together project, which is called Tessellations of the Plane. And our big question for today is how can we use shapes to make tessellations on a plane? So this lesson is part of a 7-part series that will give you the opportunity to explore geometric patterns. Each of the 7 lessons will build on each other, so you may want to refer back to earlier lessons as you go. Make sure to keep a copy of the work you do today so you can refer back to it later. So now we'll move on to our introduction/launch, and you're going to think about what do you notice and what do you wonder about these 6 images on the left. And once you've had enough time to think about that question, we're going to move on to our Explore section, and we're going to get to play with some shapes. So here's slide B of your Explore section, and for this next activity, you'll be using this applet. So you're going to click that link and choose one of the 6 shapes in the toolbar. And I'm going to put the app side by side with our directions, and I suggest you do the same, so that we can look at what we're supposed to do while also interacting with our applet. So here we are. You can see I have our same slide on the left, and I've opened the applet and I have it on my right. So I'm going to read the instructions while I'm looking at the applet, and I suggest that you do the same. So we're going to select the shape tool by clicking on it and create copies of our shape by clicking the workspace. So you're going to choose any of these 6 shapes. And I'm going to choose the diamond here, the rhombus. So create copies of your shape by clicking the workspace. And when I have enough to work with, I'm going to click on the Move tool, and that's this little arrow right here. And I'm going to drag or turn my shapes. And you can think back to what is the math word for turn that we learned in our previous unit. And so what we're doing is we're making a tessellation. And so we want what we come up with to look something like our examples from the warm-up. So I'll go back to those quickly. Right? Remember, these are all tessellations. So with the one shape that we chose in our applet, we want to make something that looks like our original warm-up. And we're going to just keep aligning our shapes until we've filled the whole space. And that's your goal. Pick whichever shape you like the best. And when you're finished, you can hide the points by unchecking this little checkbox right here. So you can see I am not done because I have not filled up my whole space. But I'm going to pause here and go back to our slides, and you should pause and give yourself enough time to make a tessellation filling the whole plane with whatever shape you chose. And again, when you're done, you can uncheck the points. While you're working, you can check off the grid if that helps you align your shapes. So play around with this, and then we'll come back to our slides. So now that you're done making your tessellation pattern on the app, you're going to describe the tessellation pattern that you came up with. And then on the right, and you might want to go back to the app to help you answer this question on the right, you're going to think, do you think it would be possible to create a different tessellation pattern with the same shape that you selected? And explain your thinking. So pause and think about slide C. Once you're finished with slide C, I want to take a moment and just think a little deeper about this word tessellation. You already have an idea about what a tessellation might be from our warm-up and from this idea of filling the space. But I want us to be clear on our definition of tessellation since it's the foundation of our whole project. So I'm going to switch my slide to show the definition of a tessellation so we have it to work with in the future. So a tessellation is a repeating pattern of one or more shapes The sides of the shapes fit together perfectly and do not overlap. the pattern goes on forever in all directions. So this diagram on the right shows part of a tessellation. So take a moment and make sure that what you created in the app and what you were just describing really fits our definition of a tessellation. And if it doesn't, you have plenty of time to go and revise your work in your app and your work on that slide. So now pause if you need to make any revisions. If you had the same understanding of tessellation that we just talked about and you want to stick with your answers, you can move ahead with me now to slide D. And on slide D, we are thinking of a situation. And in this situation, we have a character named John. So John selected one of the shapes in the app and created a tessellation pattern. He then said, I made the only pattern possible with my shape. Could John be correct? If so, what shape do you think he selected? And explain your thinking. So let's just look at which options we had in the app. And again, I encourage you to keep your instructions on one side and the app on the other so that it's easy to go back and forth. Okay, so if he's correct, if you decide that John can be correct, and you're deciding which shape you think he selected, you're choosing between the triangle, the parallelogram, the trapezoid, rhombus, square, or hexagon. So of those options, could he have made the only pattern possible, and then justify your thinking about which shape he must have chosen? If you think he's correct, and if you think he's incorrect, how do you know that that can't be possible for any of these shapes? So pause, describe your thinking on slide D, and when you're ready, we'll move on to your summarize section. And here, as always, we're going to summarize based on our focus question for the day, which was how can we use shapes to make tessellations on a plane? So record your response, use the space on the right for any notes you want to keep track of for the future. This is part 1 of a 7-part series, so please make sure you save your work today so you have it for tomorrow and the rest of the days. Thank you for joining me, and have a beautiful day.